Dawson Rider with you.
Hey YouTube, Dawson Rider here. This is kind of a fun little video I wanted to do. Well, I think it's fun, and hopefully you do, but I mean, it's a video I just kind of wanted to do for, well, fun, of just comparing the different styles and approaches of all of the dino-themed, prehistoric-themed mech we've gotten across the 4/4.5 if you include Dino Force Brave, Dino-themed Sentai / Power Ranger seasons. It's primarily going to be used to talk about just the designs and not so much the toy quality. I'm using the MMPR 2010 Megazord for that. Like, I thought about trying to include all the versions of the MMPR Megazord and like the Dino Charge Megazord, but as you can see, we're already at capacity, and like I left out in this shot stuff like, you know, Mastodon, where there's nobody to compare it to. But yeah, so I'm not necessarily doing it so much about toy quality. I'll probably bring up a few things here and there just of interest, but it's more so just talking about the design approach, because this is one of the best ways to do it. Obviously, we got everybody in the shot right now that mostly that we're going to be comparing. I think Dino Thuder and Kylo's missing, but he'll be in the comparison. But we'll take a look at some individual shots. I'll do kind of a little small montage of just a brief picture of them so you can sort of get a look at the evolution, and then we'll bring them all on camera and talk about them, and then I'll have a final shot talking about their mecha formations, mainly just the primary ones, and by mainly I mean that's the only one. I might do an update video on this in the future when we get more Rangers, if we get more beyond gold, or one where we take a look at all of their final formations, because that would be interesting. But I don't know, I just thought this would be fun ever since we got, you know, the new Dino season that came out. Also, I'm not comparing Mill Needle because technically it's like its own thing. I feel like the closest would be comparing the Stegosauruses. Maybe I'll bring that up in a future video, but for now I'm leaving it out. Especially since at this recording I don't have it, so that makes it a little difficult. But I have to do some time travel, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, let's get on to the main video. We'll start, I guess, with T-Rex. I don't know why I did that. That was weird. Okay, so we all got all the T-Rexes in here. That's why I did the montage, because it's kind of hard to fit everyone in here and get a perfect, like, exact pan of everybody. I'll probably open it up a little bit for the Megazords. But I like how there's kind of, like, an almost evolutionary chain, like, because you have MMPR T-Rex, which is really small, then Dino Thunder gets a little bit bigger, and then you have the taller Kyoryuger ones, and then he's a little bit shorter. So way to screw it up, you're supposed to be bigger than all of them. But it's kind of interesting to see them all together, like it looks like a, you know, an evolution chart on it. And it's interesting, again, seeing the different approaches. Like you have MMPR T-Rex down here, which is a very classic and simple approach, and it's interesting to see how it evolves based on like how our knowledge of T-Rexes evolved, like with the feathers and stuff like that. I think that, setting aside this one, I think this one's my favorite, to be honest. Dino Force Brave. I mean, it's got a Gatling gun on it. Freaking Gatling gun on its freaking head. Setting aside Dino Force Brave, if we're just talking about like the core lineup, I've always really liked Abarangers. I don't know, I just always thought it had a really cool look. It looked kind of sleeked. It looked pretty badass. I mean, Gabutir here, he's got his charms. I mean, there's some people that don't like this style. I didn't mind it. I think it had a lot of personality, and I think it was very fitting of the show. It's definitely very different from these approaches, but I've always been partial to this one. Tyramigo's pretty cool too. In terms of the toy, I think it just doesn't look as cool to me as, you know, it does in the show, but he's got a pretty cool design. I've mentioned a couple times the design of these guys in general remind me of like when you go to a store and you see like a knockoff brand that's like Dino Extreme Bots, and it's like looks like that. Not like in a bad way, it's just that's kind of what it reminds me of. But yeah, it's interesting seeing the different approaches. This is kind of like if a more like badass approach kind of merged with Kyoryuger's, like almost like if these two had a baby but then there was like a third father. Like, I don't know, but it's interesting to see. I think that he's my least favorite, although he definitely has his cool moments in the show. Like, I'm sure there's lots of people that like him. But yeah, it's definitely interesting to see the different styles. You kind of go from more classic to kind of like an improved cool to cartoon to freaking Gatling guns to Tyramigo, who's just, he also has those, you know, all these different firepower on him, all these different firepower on him. That's good English. And he's got drills on his shoulders. So yeah. All right, now let's take a look at the Triceratops. I don't love them a Triceralots. I'm so sorry. Okay, in the case of this one, it was much easier to fit everybody in the frame, and there's a nice, like, different pocket here in the middle. In fact, if Kira here wasn't here, it would be clear who, like, just stands out amongst the bunch, because largely it's Blue Rangers, except for Kyoryuger, which was the standout. But you know, this is a very machine-oriented approach here for Zyuranger, very flat. It looks a little bit better in some of the other versions of the toys. I always thought, I think, to be honest, spoiler alert, this is my favorite one. I always really liked the design for this guy. I thought in general, like AbarenOh Blue's stuff was a really nice update of MMPR Blue's from his like mecha to the helmet. Like it just looked like the modernized version, which really worked for the vibe we gave it in Dino Thunder. But in a lot of ways, I also have a huge soft spot for this guy right here, or this girl right here, because I just thought that was so freaking cool, because, you know, we're so used to blue Triceratops, and then we continued that tradition later on, little did we know, but this was a freaking this was a freaking pink Triceratops. I just think that's so awesome. It stands out so much. I think just design-wise, I prefer Abarangers, but just in concept, I've always had a huge soft spot for this one, because I think it's so freaking unique. I think Kyoryuger here isn't the greatest, even though I like the full mecha formation. I just think this looks kind of silly in terms of like the weapon gimmick. I think this one is the least represented well in terms of toy. Like it looks so pathetic sitting here. It looks like, look at that. But, you know, design-wise, like, it looks cooler in the show. I do really dig, like, the knight vibe and the sword there. I think that makes it stand out. But unfortunately, it's not represented toy-wise. But yeah, it's really interesting to see. I think that it's funny that there's a lot of similarities in the way that these kind of, you know, line up. But there's also some sort of vast differences in certain ways. I don't know. It's interesting to think about. Okay, we got our three Ankylos here. This is kind of a special and interesting case because, you know, obviously they're all three quite different. You know, they're all different colors. They're not, you know, one's known for having traditional, like, oh, red T-Rex, blue Triceratops. And this one's also the first to be, like, part of, like, the mainline Zords, whereas these were more auxiliaries. I mean, this one did have a Ranger attached to it. It's kind of like a midway point, but you know what I mean. I mean, you start off with the orange one here for Abaranger. It had the spinning gimmick with the tail here. You spin this and the tail spins. It became like a drill weapon on there for the Ankylo Zord. And then you had more of the hammer gimmick here for Ankydon. You know, when you put, I almost said you put the memory in there. When you put the battery in there, this pops out as a hammer. It's kind of interesting. You continue the hammer gimmick here just in a different way. Like this one literally doesn't do anything. Like both of these have a gimmick attached to it, both on their own and when it transforms, whereas this one just is its Lego self. You know, obviously it does some different things when you combine it, but it does kind of have a version of the hammer gimmick, and obviously it's a lot smaller. But I think this is one of the more interesting cases just in terms of the role in which this dinosaur is chosen. This was another kind of interesting comparison I wanted to look at in this. I know it doesn't have an across-the-board example amongst a majority of them, but I felt it was worth looking at these two because we haven't had a saber-tooth since the original prehistoric-based season, and it's not one that's cropped up a lot. So I just thought it was interesting to take a look. I mean, so there's not really a precedent like with Triceratops, which is largely blue. I mean, obviously T-Rex is always red, but we had our original Yellow Ranger, Saber-tooth Tiger, Griffin Thunder's our power. Like, I should have put the Griffin Thunder Zord in here. But then years later, in our most recent one, we get a green one, which I thought was really cool. I think because I primarily associated this with yellow, even though it had only ever been really used once. I'll be honest, I prefer this. I think this looks pretty awesome. It's got a lot going on. It's got a really cool look to its helmet design or head design or whatever, head sculpt. I don't know, I just think it's really neat. But I thought it was interesting to compare the first time we've done this type of thing in years, and it's, you know, a different color. It's so vastly different. I mean, technically, this is a Sabersaurus because they have their own canon where this is a dinosaur. But still, I thought it was worth noting that it was the first time we had used this, whereas there's a lot of other quote-unquote dinos that we've reused quite a bit over the years. Alright, so the gang's all here. I even had to widen the review station a bit since, you know, there's a lot of guys in here. A lot of Megazord formations are like that, but it's interesting to see sort of the evolution. Obviously, Dino Force Brave guy's kind of the outlier because it's kind of a weird case in general and his color scheme is so different. But, you know, you have sort of the more classic look of Daizyujin, aka the MMPR Megazord. It would look better, I think, with the Legacy one, but you know, you get the gist, because all that gray part's there. Then, you know, you got Abarangers here, which I thought was always a really unique one. The way you had, like, the drill arm and stuff, and it, you know, didn't use traditional, like, hands and swords. I mean, they did have that formation, but still just at the base level. And then you have Kyoryugen, which was just really loud. Like, it very much so fits the style, I think, which I do like it for that. And, you know, it's got the pink Triceratops arm! And then we got our buddy now, over here, Three Knights Kishiryuoh, which I really do like the design of him in terms of, like, the T-Rex robot. I think it looks pretty awesome. I'm not too huge of a fan of the fact that the rest of it kind of just feels like, hey, here's some sleeves. Like, I mean, this is kind of the same thing where it's primarily the T-Rex and you just have the arms, but it just feels more traditional, and it feels like those guys are participating more than this. I don't know. Like, he's got a cool sword arm. And then you got this guy over here, our Dino Force Brave guy. This is actually, if I'm being honest, I think my favorite. Actually, in a much more real sense, my favorite Dino Mecha is Ace, because he's all mechs doll people. I really have always liked this one. I thought it was super unique. I'm kind of a sucker for, like, white and black colored toku suits. That's why White Dino Thunder is my favorite. But I think it's just really cool, really unique. It's like kind of extreme. Like, you have the Gatling gun on his helmet, and then you have the Gatling gun on the T-Rex. And then he usually has this saw blade sword, which is also awesome. I just don't have it there because it was kind of conflicting with standing with everybody. But I always really dug that, and I like how much this stands out, even though it's kind of a non-traditional consideration for like a main Dino Team mech. But I think it's just interesting to take a look at the differences between these. What is your guys' personal favorite? I mean, I kind of like them all in certain aspects. I think, like I said, Dino Force Brave is my favorite because I like how unique it is, but if we're just going amongst the core ones, it's kind of hard for me to decide because, like I said, I really dig how different Abarangers was at the time, but I also think, honestly, Daizyujin holds up. Like, maybe it's a little nostalgia, but I think it's got just a really good classic design, and I really like it for that because it feels really simple, but not too simple, if that makes any sense. Like, it's not too busy, but it stands out. It has some unique details to it. I think it's the most different from these three. Like, I think these three, they kind of look like cousins at the family reunion, don't they? But yeah, I kind of like them all in their own ways, but I have to say I'm probably partial to Dino Force Brave and the old MMPR over here. But yeah, I just wanted to do this video for fun. Like I said, it was much less about like the toy quality, more so that it was kind of just about interesting to take a look at the different designs and the different approaches. It's kind of interesting how this is like the only one with 5 dinos in it, and 2 of them aren't even really dinos. And then you got a lot of the samey dinosaurs going along in these series and stuff like that. But it's interesting to see the evolution and the different approaches and kind of how the similarities happen across the years. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Maybe I'll do a future one that's kind of similar for different things, maybe the Morphers or something, I don't know. But until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and of course, don't forget to climb the steps and ring that bell to notifications for all my videos. Till next time, Dawson Rider, signing out.